If you enjoy our podcast, please like and subscribe and consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Albuquerque Journal to help us bring you more content like this. You can find this episode and all of our podcasts on the Albuquerque Journal website, abqjournal.com, as well as YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. See the show notes for a discount code on a digital subscription. Thank you for supporting the Albuquerque Journal, New Mexico's leading news.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Prep Central, the Albuquerque Journal's high school sports podcast. I am James Yodice, the high school sports editor at the Journal. Welcome. This is it, last weekend of the football season. So we've got 5 championship games coming up on Saturday, all at 1 o'clock, spread out across the state in Albuquerque, Rio Rancho, Dexter, Artesia, Texico, all playing on Saturday afternoon. So we're going to talk about that. My guest is going to be Sebastian Noel, the lead voice for ProView Networks, who's going to have crews at all of the championship games around the state. On Saturday, they broadcast their games, for the NFHS network. He and I are going to talk about all the championship games, and we'll probably talk a little basketball too. Matter of fact, it's Tuesday as I talk to you, November 25th. I'm actually going out to watch a doubleheader in basketball tonight at Albuquerque High. So let's get right into football. So we're in championship games now. Let's start real quick with 6A. We've got, of course, number 2 Cleveland playing host to number 1 Las Cruces, who was undefeated. Cleveland just beat up on Hobbs in the semifinals last weekend. I think it was 67-16. Las Cruces defeated La Cueva 44-7. That game was competitive for about a quarter and a half. Las Cruces scored the final 16 of the first half, then got an early touchdown in the third quarter, and it was just never a game. So Cruces, the last time they played Cleveland in the semifinals or later was in Las Cruces, I think in 2021. That is why this game is up here in Rio Rancho this weekend. That's a whole nother argument. I know just talking about the who's who in high school state football can set some people off, and has, in fact, set some people off who were filling my timeline on social media over the weekend talking about this. The 5A state championship game is at Bulldog Bowl in Artesia, number 1 Artesia, number 2 Roswell. District rivals, one of the great rivalry games in the state. These two, I think, have been playing longer than any other 2 schools in New Mexico. These two have a great rivalry. They're playing in the state finals for the 3rd straight year. Artesia had a surprisingly tough time with Lovington in the semis. They won 35-30, although the game was 35-24, and then Lovington picked up a late score. But Lovington had several leads in this game. They led at halftime. They gave Artesia all they could want, and that of course, Lovington-Artesia is, to me, one of the great rivalries in high school football in the state. I've been watching these two play for a long time. So Artesia advances. Roswell, the defending state champion, went down and beat Gadsden in the semis. And, as a quick side note, Gadsden has now been in the semifinals for 2 straight years. All credit to the Panthers for making that program continue to be a success. But they're still not in Roswell's class. They're still not in Artesia's class. So Roswell wins in the semifinals. Artesia beat Roswell 42-28 in the regular season. So 2 years ago, they played in the state final in Artesia. Artesia won that game. Last year, they played in the state final at Wool Bowl in Roswell. Roswell won that game. So now they go back to Artesia for the final at 1 o'clock Saturday at Bulldog Bowl. I always say the single best high school sports environment in New Mexico is Artesia on a Saturday afternoon hosting the state championship game. There is nothing that comes close. There are others that try. Nothing comes close to this. It's the best single environment you can get in high school football in New Mexico. The 4A game is one I hate that I have to miss, but I'm going to miss. It's going to be out at Nusenda Community Stadium on Saturday, 1 o'clock. Number 1 Bloomfield traveling down to play number 2 St. Pius. These two played in Bloomfield last year in the state final, so that's why Pius gets to host this year. Bloomfield gave up an early score to Taos last week and then scored like 41 in a row. And they ended up winning, I think, 65-13. St. Pius dominated Chaparral 41-0. As a matter of fact, they beat Chaparral 2 games this year by a combined 91-0. So, and that's just in 6 quarters. So you've got the 2 best teams in 4A. We've been talking about this since August, or September, I should say. These have been the 2 best teams in 4A. These are the 2 teams that I expected, that most of us expected to be in the championship game come Thanksgiving weekend, and now we have it. So this is going to be a tremendous matchup. Like I said, I hate that I'll miss it. I'll be at the Cleveland Las Cruces game on Saturday at 1 o'clock in Rio Rancho. But if you are so inclined, Bloomfield and St. Pius, well worth your time. That has the potential to be perhaps the most competitive and exciting of all the 5 championship games coming up this weekend. In Class 3A, you've got number 1 St. Mike's will be on the road as well, just as with Las Cruces and Bloomfield. They're a number 1 seed, but they're traveling. They're going to play at number 2 Dexter, 1 o'clock Saturday. These two played in Santa Fe for the state title last year. St. Mike's won a 2-point game. St. Mike's has been more dominant against its competition than anybody in any other class. That includes Bloomfield, that includes Artesia, that includes Las Cruces. St. Mike's has been more dominant against the 3A competition than any other team has against their competition. And St. Mike's has just a smothering, spectacular defense. For Dexter, boy, if they don't find a way to put up 3 touchdowns in this game, they can't win, I don't think. St. Mike's just does not allow usually more than 8 or 9 points in a game. They've been that good. So St. Mike's going for a 3rd straight title. They haven't lost a game since the middle of 2023. So St. Mike's going to be a prohibitive favorite when they go down to Dexter on Saturday. And then the 2A game is in Texico at 1 o'clock Saturday. That is number 1 Texico playing at home against number 3 Eunice. As a matter of fact, all 7 state championship games in New Mexico this year, including 6-man and 8-man, the number 1 seed advanced to the final, and in all but one of those games, they were playing the number 2 seed. Eunice is the only non-number 2 seed to make it this far. They're a 3 seed. They lost a game to Texico in the regular season a few weeks ago, 42-34. Texico has made a change at quarterback. We're going to talk about that with my guest, Sebastian Noel, here shortly. And so Eunice has got its work cut out for it. But look, this is right now the best 2A rivalry going on in New Mexico. That's going to be an incredible environment down there as Texico looks to win another title. So as I noted, Sebastian Noel from ProView Networks is my guest today. He and I took some time to discuss not just the 5 championship games, talk about the issue of centralization, again, regionalization. This has been a hot topic this week, so we talked a little bit about that as well. So here's my visit with Sebastian, which took place a little earlier today. Okay, as promised, bringing in Sebastian Noel into the discussion today as we talk about state championship football games on Saturday. Sebastian, of course, the lead voice for ProView Networks, which is based here in Albuquerque, and they'll be doing games, at least the 2 local games here for the NFHS network. Sebastian, welcome. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to be with you one more time for football. We'll have a crew at every championship game on Saturday.
I know. And you and I are both going to Albuquerque High a little bit later today. As you and I talk, it's Tuesday afternoon. We're both going to Albuquerque High for a season-opening basketball doubleheader between Albuquerque High and Volcano Vista. I think we're both interested to see how Volcano Vista is going to look, the boys anyway. I was talking to Hobbs coach, girls coach Joe Carpenter the other night on Tuesday night, and we were talking about 5A in general, and he said, James, if you put a gun to my head, I think Albuquerque High is the best girls basketball team in 5A, which, they're going to be awfully good. They're getting a kid who missed last year, I think, with a knee injury named Savannah Combs coming back tonight. So I think we're both eager to watch the Albuquerque High girls and see how this team progresses over the next several months.
Yeah, and you know what? I ran into Lisa Villarreal and her brother Ross at a basketball broadcast I was doing up in Espanola for the college game, and they were both pretty happy that no one's talking about them. So they're optimistic about their season as well.
Hey, look, Lisa is as good as it gets, she's got 5 rings, and if you're talking about like X's and O's, and if you're talking about a defensive mind, Lisa is as good as it gets. She knows how to game plan for a team, even when she doesn't have necessarily the greatest personnel. She will, that's a sign of a great coach. She can find a way to get her team competitive in just about any game, regardless of their talent level.
Yeah, I think we've seen that.
Yeah. So we're going to talk lots of football here as we get ready for Saturday. I think you're going to be at Cleveland, right?
Correct.
Yep. You and I are both going to be at the Las Cruces Cleveland game. And of course, Sebastian and I have both talked about in a previous podcast that we would both be disappointed, and we are, that we're not going to be able to watch Bloomfield play St. Pius, which is going on at the same time across town at Community Stadium. And Sebastian's idea, and he floated this the last time he was on this podcast, and your idea is the best one, which is, can we not try to find a way to stagger start times so football fans who might want to watch both these games could do so, maybe 12 and 3:30 or 1 and 4:30. I thought that was a great idea. It would take an agreement from at least one of the traveling teams, either Bloomfield or Las Cruces, to make that work. But I'm with you. I mean, look, if you could do one of these games at noon, for example, and the other one at 3:30, maybe, you'd have a whole bunch of people that would go out to Community Stadium for one game and race out to Cleveland and try and see the other one.
Well, yeah, and I think just imagine. I think the impetus would be on the smaller game to try to make that happen. Because imagine the amount of fans that would also be there supporting St. Pius that might be going to the Cleveland game, right? Because those are kids that are in the community, obviously, and so it takes a village, and we all support those guys. But I think they would get the largest crossover, as St. Pius would get a huge crowd if that time was staggered.
Yeah, and if you think about it, football fans in the southeastern part of the state could say the same thing. Suppose you played Dexter and St. Michael's at 12, and then played Artesia and Roswell right up the road at 3:30. You'd have the same situation there. Dexter is not quite halfway between Roswell and Artesia, but it's a short drive. It's a very short drive. Football fans down there might like to watch both of those games, just as Albuquerque fans or Metro fans would want to do that here.
Goes back to my previous argument on the other podcast, not in favor of centralization, but in favor of regionalization, right? But we don't have to revisit that if you don't want to.
No, I know. I've been pushing that for 10 years. And, Channel 4 last night did a story. Their lead story last night was about possibly centralizing football and who's in favor of playing at University Stadium. And their story had several actual factual mistakes that didn't help it. But it's interesting that this subject has gained so much traction this particular week. I'm not sure why. I mean, it seems like it would gain more if we had like Cleveland playing La Cueva again. But it's a topic that sets people off. People have been arguing with me. I spent, 2 or 3 hours the other night on my social media account talking to people about this. And of course, my opinion's always been the same. This is my opinion. I think it works better the way it is. That doesn't mean it could not work at a central location. That doesn't mean it wouldn't work. I just prefer it this way. And I think you do too, because you and I have both done a good number of games, championship games on campus sites in these towns that brings an atmosphere that you can't match anywhere else. So yeah, you and I are both in agreement on that. Regionalization is something I've been pushing for, 10, 12 years maybe. I think that's a fantastic idea. You could put Eunice and Texico, for example. You could play them at the Wool Bowl. That's roughly halfway. You could play it at Eastern New Mexico, which is more of an advantage for Texico since it's closer. But I mean, suppose Artesia's Bulldog Bowl wasn't being used. You could put Eunice and Texico at Bulldog Bowl, which would be a fantastic environment, which would be a major upgrade over either school's facility without making it so big that it overwhelms the event. Roswell and Artesia, you could move them to Watson Memorial Stadium in Hobbs, which is the third biggest venue in the state after UNM and New Mexico State. It's bigger than any of the state schools. You could move them there if you were so inclined. So yeah, you and I are definitely in agreement on the regionalization thing. I like that idea. I think it could work. You could use Albuquerque for a regional site. If you had a team, suppose you had, Socorro playing St. Michael's in a state championship game. You could play it out at Community Stadium, which is a great venue, which would be great for the fans. And give you that centralization thing you're looking for. So I think there are different ways to make it work. We're not there yet, but we'll see how it goes.
And I think Dusty Young put it best right in that story that you were referencing to. If the schools want it, it will happen, right? I mean, it's not like the NMAA is out with their pitchforks saying no. If the members that vote want it, it'll happen.
I've said this for many years because I cover all the NMAA board meetings. They have 4 a year. I'm there at 9 a.m. 4 times a year in the NMAA offices covering the board meetings. So I've heard this topic discussed many times. And I'm telling you, from my experience, one of the reasons it's not going to change, at least I don't think it will in the near future, is because the members of the board of directors at the NMAA are primarily small school superintendents. Not all of them, but a good number of them. They don't want to give up the chance to host a state championship game to play it at UNM Stadium. What's the benefit to that? I was talking to Dexter's coach, Sonny Duran, about this today, as a matter of fact. And we were talking about this whole notion. And I said, I'm pretty much betting that your athletic director, your principal, and your superintendent, none of them would want to move a state championship game away from Dexter's field to here just because people wanted to have centralization. And he said that is exactly right. And it's that way in a lot of towns, probably more in the southeastern section of the state than other areas. But these superintendents that are on the board of directors, they want the chance to host games, and they have to be there. It's them. That is the single group that has to change, that has to be changed on their point of view. It's not even so much the NMA staff. Look, players and coaches can get together and say, you know what, let's we're tired of playing at home. Let's go play in Albuquerque, wherever we play. They would have to convince their principal, who in turn would have to convince the superintendent, and then the superintendent would have to come lobby the board of directors here and say, let's change it. But the members of the board, as I said, these are largely small town superintendents, by and large. They don't want to risk the chance of not getting to host just to appease people that want the games here. And so it's the NMAA board of directors that ultimately, they're the people whose minds have to be changed. Nobody else matters in this equation. I don't think a lot of people realize this. I do, just because this is my job and I've done it for a while. If the board of directors can't be convinced, then we're never going to have centralization, no matter how loud people get about this. So that is where people, I think, if they're genuinely upset and they genuinely want a system change and a format change, that's where they've got to start. They've got to talk to the board of directors and sway them. Those are the people that are making the decision at the end of the day. If they make a change like this, it's the board that sits in that room. I think there are 14 board members. They're the ones that are going to vote on this, not anybody else. The NMAA staff will just make a recommendation to the board, which is usually how these things work, and then the board will vote yay or nay. So for people that are hearing my voice, if you're not sure how the process works, the board of directors at the NMAA, they're the ones that have to be moved off of their current position. It doesn't matter what the players want. It doesn't matter what the coaches want. I'd say most of the fans would prefer to have a home game than come up here. We'll see. We'll see how that pans out in 5 years or 8 years. But I don't think we're anywhere close to changing the format that we have now.
No, I think two things that are happening that could help is obviously Fernando Lobo coming out with what he said, that UNM would be a willing partner. That has not always been the case in the past. And then the job that Coach Eck is doing with just making Lobo football special right now, and also the way he's reaching out to coaches and the Coaches Association. That hasn't always been a warm and fuzzy relationship. A matter of fact, I can remember with Coach Davey, it was downright adversarial. So, I think everyone involved wants what's best, and just, let's just see how this thing plays out in the future.
Yeah, actually, Jeff Lynn from Roswell put out a media post today. Yeah, where he screenshot an email from Jason Eck, who said, and probably he sent the same generic email probably to all the coaches that were in the finals, but it was a definite reaching out effort by Coach Eck, just to let his high school coaches know, hey, we're following you, we're interested in you. If you have kids that you think might be good for us at the next level, let us know. It's about relationship building, right? So he's doing this. That clearly is going over well. Fernando Lobo, as you referenced, put out something on social media yesterday about this. So here's one of the caveats. So if UNM wanted to host, and they may very well host someday, I don't know. And if they do, I'll cover the games. They may very well host, but take this weekend, for example. UNM plays at home on Friday. To do all 5 11-man classes at UNM, and you have to do all 5. You cannot cherry pick and just do the bigger schools because you don't think the smaller schools deserve it. There are way too many people out there who believe this, and I hate that. It is not just about the upper divisions. And there's some people that wrote into me and said, hey, look, 2A and 3A, they can play Community Stadium or Wilson Stadium. And my response was, if we're going to do it at UNM, then everybody should have a chance to play there. Everybody, not just the big schools, because you don't think the small schools are worth your time. So to do this, you'd have to have 2 days. You have 5 championship games. You can't do it in one day. It's tough enough to do it in 2 days. You would need 2 days, which means you'd need a whole open weekend, which means on a weekend like this, when the Lobos are home on Friday, you'd have 1 day. So the Lobos would have to arrange their schedule in the future, or the NMAA would have to adjust their calendar to create an open weekend. They'd have to push the calendar back a week the way it used to be, with state championship games on the first Saturday in December, which is the way it was for many years until maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and we moved it up to Thanksgiving Saturday. The calendar would have to be adjusted, or you'd have to have UNM agree to not play at home on Thanksgiving weekend. And why would you want to do that? Why would the Lobos agree to that if they had a chance to win a conference championship like they, regular season championship like they do this week? Why would they agree to go play on the road just to satisfy the NMAA? They're not going to do that. So you'd have to have a whole lot of logistics be put into place to do this before we could even start talking about it. And then you have to figure out in what order all these teams are going to play. Because, if you do 3 games at UNM on a Saturday, what are the times? 10, 2, and 6, 11, 3, and 7? Who plays in the morning? What if it's a cold morning? You can ask these fans to travel up for a cold morning game. What if we get what if we get a cold weather day? We have a 7:00 game the first weekend in December. It becomes a miserable experience. And UNM is not a great place to watch football. I've said this before. It's bigger, for sure. Is it better? No, I've long said no. But if someday we come up here to UNM, there are a whole lot of hoops that have to be jumped through to make this work. And it's great that UNM has made this outreach, but wow, now you'd have to figure out the calendar, UNM's calendar, the Mountain West calendar, and then the NMAA calendar on top of that, because UNM's not going to agree to play a road game. I think Coach Jack came out and said today he would love it if this weekend became the annual season ender game. So they're not going to play. They're not going to want to play on the road every Thanksgiving Saturday. They're going to want to play at least half of these games at home. So what's the alternative? Then you got to adjust the NMAA calendar and go back to the way we used to have it, which is having it the first Saturday in December. But then, of course, this is the reason we moved it in the first place to Thanksgiving weekend, because the winter coaches want their athletes for the winter sports, primarily wrestling and basketball. This is why we moved it to start with, so they could have that option. So the NMAA would have to agree to go back to the old system probably and end it on the first Saturday in November. And then all these athletes that are playing football in the championship games would miss a week or 2 full weeks of basketball, which the basketball coaches are not in favor of. So there's a whole lot of logistics that would have to be ironed out. It's not just as simple as saying, yeah, let's just play at UNM. That's great. It's not that simple.
Yeah, I guess more to come, right? Let's see how it plays out over the years.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'll still
is slow at times.
I know. I don't know if I'll still be the high school sports editor if we ever move to UNM. I would go watch because I'd be curious to see how it would go. But anyway, so let's get on to business. We got championship games coming up on Saturday. We're going to start right at the top with 6A. Number 2 Cleveland playing host to number 1 Las Cruces. 1:00 Saturday in Rio Rancho. I covered the first game between these two back in September. It was a great game. Cruces won it 38-34. They had a touchdown run, I think, with about 90 seconds left. Cleveland had their chances in this game. And I think Cleveland really has bemoaned what went wrong that night and are eager to have a chance, anyway, to right some of those wrongs. But to me, there are at least 3 coin flip games this weekend. The 6A game, the 4A game between Bloomfield and Pius, and the 2A game between Eunice and Texico. I don't know if you agree with this or not.
Yeah, I think all 3 of those games have the potential to be really great games. And I think this one, I'm looking forward to this matchup more because I didn't think the first game was particularly clean, right? It was pretty sloppy on both sides, a lot of penalties. I could see this one being a little more high quality, just as close, just as entertaining, but maybe a little more high quality.
Yeah, there was, and actually throughout these playoffs, on pretty much every game I've covered has been really penalty filled, which has been unfortunate. Way more than the regular season, even the last month. Cruces has been hammered by penalties in these first 2 rounds. They had 19 of them against Las Lunas. They had, I think, 13 or 14 against La Cueva last weekend. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but they were over 100 yards in penalties. Both games, Maverick, they're about 300 combined yards for these 2 playoff games. Cruces has got to play cleaner, and they did from the Las Lunas game in the quarterfinals to La Cueva. Last week, Danny Morrow went for 233 by my count with multiple touchdowns. They've got the big 3, and they've been riding that big 3 all year. Gunnar Guardiola, the quarterback, Francisco Winnikoff, their great receiver, and, of course, Danny Morrow, their tailback. And Cleveland, no matter how well Cleveland is playing, they still have to deal with these three incredible game breakers.
Yeah, they're pretty special. Amaro is just... I made a player comparison on the broadcast to Brandon Baeza. You remember their great running back from a few years ago. It seems like they always have one just like that. Powerful runner, low to the ground, so tough to tackle, speedy. Cleveland will have their hands full with him. I like that Cleveland secondary. I think to do some things in the air against Guardiola and Winnicott, but I think stopping Amaro or limiting Amaro, especially the big plays, a lot of the third down conversions, I think that'll be key.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Brandon Baeza. He was one of my favorite all-time Las Cruces Bulldogs. That kid was very tiny, but man, you know, you could stick him anywhere. He was a great punt returner, a kick returner, a running back. He was electrifying to watch. And, you know, you said it, low to the ground. Look, if you have a strong running back, strong legs, low to the ground, low center of gravity, man, you know, they don't all have to look like Ronnie Daniels. You know, they don't all have to be 6'3" and 210. You know, you can get a kid who's 5'8" and 180 and accomplish the same results. And Amaro kind of does that, and he's got breakaway speed. He's I would describe him as a very patient runner. He does not seem to be in a hurry when he runs the ball. He's more than happy to let his line do their thing and wait that extra half second before he makes his move.
Yeah, he whatever is required, right? He can beat you on the edges, but he can also churn out a couple of yards right up the middle because he's powerful enough. So I think definitely they have a huge weapon and advantage, I would say, at that position. Now, that weapon is only as good as his offensive line, right?
Yep.
So sometimes that's where Cleveland they've stuck anybody in there at running back, and they've made them look like world beaters because Cleveland's offensive line's so good.
Yeah, look, I mean, on the other side of it, this Cleveland team does not run the ball nearly as well as they usually do, and that's primarily because they don't have that, that one dynamic alpha back they often have. You know, they've got Samuel Bustillos, who's a solid back, but he's not the same as some of the other backs they have had through the last, 6 to 8 years. This is more of a team that's going to beat you in the air, and frankly, Jordan Hatch is the best quarterback in 6A. His numbers bear that out. I mean, his touchdown to interception ratio is astounding. And of course, he plays for the quarterback whisperer, Heath Ridenauer, who's an assistant now at Cleveland. And of course, then you have Evan Nunez and you have Jacob Maldonado, AJ Vigil. Those three, in particular, Maldonado and Nunez. This is as good a wide receiving group as there is in 6A, and you have a quarterback who knows how to deliver the ball. He's patient. He has great chemistry with his receivers. So, to me, the onus on Saturday is on the Las Cruces pass rush. Can they get to Hatch and get him off his X and get him moving around a little bit? And B, it's on the Las Cruces secondary. They're going to have to play the greatest game they've ever played because they're dealing with athletes that are next level, all of them. And if they are unable to contain Hatch in the passing game, and I'm leaning toward Cleveland in this game anyway. But if they cannot find a way to keep this pass game relatively in check without any big hitters or big chunk plays, I think it's going to be a tough day for Las Cruces.
One thing they need to repeat from the first game, they need to force that really uncharacteristic Jordan Hatch interception, right? In the first game, it came at a bad time. It came out a bad spot on the field. That doesn't happen very often. I think Las Cruces has to force a turnover or two on Saturday. One point that stuck out that you said they're a passing team. They have to beat you through the air. But would it honestly surprise you if Coach Ridenauer ran the ball 50 times on Saturday? It wouldn't shock me.
No, look, I mean, if it means keeping Guardiola and Amaro and Winnicott and that group off the field or limiting their play snaps, yeah, I can see it. But, oh boy, that's a stretch. I didn't see that in the first game. Heath is a brilliant mind, and I'm sure he's going to have a new wrinkle or two on Saturday. I don't know what exactly, but I'm sure he will have something new and fresh for Las Cruces on Saturday. So we're both very excited for this game. Like I said, I'm leaning toward Cleveland. The first game was such a, like I said, the first game went down to the last minute. Like you said, Jordan made a rare pick. I think he's only been picked, 4 times all year. And he was only picked 2 times last year. So this is a kid that does not make many errant throws. And I think if he plays a clean game, I'm leaning Cleveland in a close game, like 35-31, something like that.
Where are we at, by the way, in our picks?
Now we should let everybody know. Now, Sebastian has been joining us for high school football picks all season. I won the regular season by 4 games, but it was close all the way through. He and I we reset at 0 when we started the playoffs. Sebastian won the first week. We had the same record the second week. I finished 1 game ahead of him last week, a rare 11-0 record, and Sebastian went 10-1. The only game, matter of fact, the reason we're tied is because you missed both the championship games in 6-man and 8-man. Otherwise, you would have a lead. You're doing fine in the 11-man stuff, but you missed the 6-man final with your beloved Logan Longhorns, and then with Fort Sumner winning last weekend. So he and I are tied. We're both, I think, 46-11, which is over 80%, which is pretty good as we go into Championship Saturday. Like I said, I've given up my Cleveland pick. I'm not going to give up any other picks today. But I am going to give up that one. Our picks will be out in the Journal on Friday. And we've got 5 games. I don't know if he and I are going to be the same on all 5. As long as we're different on one, then we can focus on that one game deciding the whole playoffs. So it's been a fun competition. And to be honest, 11-0 in the semifinal round is great for me. But I would say, and I would admit, we didn't have a lot of games on the board last week that I think we could truly define as games that could be nail-biting games. I think most of the teams, you and I had all the same, you and I had the same 10, 11-man teams last week in the semifinals, and I think that's because when we looked at it, right down the road, Eunice and Texico in 2A, St. Mike's and Dexter in 3A, Bloomfield and Pius in 4A, Artesia and Roswell in 5A, and then Cleveland and Cruces in 6A. All of these teams were prohibitive favorites, so I shouldn't pat myself on the back too much. It's good to go at 11-0, but this week going to be much tougher on the picks, my man.
Yeah, I should have, Coach Hatley and I are going to have to talk about the way he disappointed me last week.
Coach Hatley, he's referring to Drew Hatley, who's the 8-man coach at Melrose, which I think was going for, wasn't it a 3rd straight title, I think? Yeah. So anyway, we're going to have fun. We're going to have our picks on Friday. Like I said, I'm giving up my 6A pick. I'm not going to give up any others today. And speaking of which, we got to expedite things here. Both Sebastian and I got to get out to Albuquerque High here in about an hour. Let's talk 5A first. Artesia beat Roswell, I think 42-28, I think in the regular season game. They're playing in the finals for the 3rd straight year. Coach Lynn from Roswell told me early in the year, actually he was on this podcast the week they played each other in the regular season. He said, this is the best Artesia team I've ever coached against. So everything is on Artesia. They've got a fantastic quarterback, Derek Warren, Bryce Parra, who's been just a sensational multi-purpose back for them. Trent Egeland, been a great receiver. This has been as dynamic an offense as you would expect from Artesia. So it starts there with the Roswell defense. Can they summon away and keep this game in the low to mid 20s, which would give them a chance?
Yeah, I mean, and if anyone can do that, it would be Roswell. And Artesia's looked a little more human in the playoffs. They've given up some points, but I mean, is there a better home field advantage than the Bulldog Bowl? I've been there for a championship, like the year they played Belen, and remember Belen had that stud running back Diego Casillas, and I mean there is no bigger home field advantage than the Bulldog Bowl.
Yeah, as a quick sidebar, I have often said in this job, I don't believe in home field advantage at all in high school football. I've seen enough road teams win playoff games over the years that, it doesn't really matter. Usually the better team will win. Home field doesn't matter, except in the case of Bulldog Bowl, which is such an intimidating experience. They fire that damn cannon and your head shakes and your whole body shakes. The history, they've got those 33 footballs on the side of the press box that the visiting fans have to look at. It is a super intimidating environment. Number one, because of its history, but number two, more than that, it's because Artesia is usually so damn good in football. They just put pressure on you whenever you play them. So I would agree. Artesia is probably the one place where I would say, okay, that's probably worth a touchdown. I think that's fair to say.
Tell you a quick story about the Bulldog Bowl. Went down there to do a game with San Juan Mendoza as my color commentator, right? And we were there hours before the game, so we got to go to the little museum they have, which he'd never been. He didn't really, and he just kind of looked around and he said, he said two things. He's like, one, he's like, they could have put all these trophies and plaques anywhere, but they chose to put them right where the visiting team has to walk by them. And then he said, I never realized how cool this place was, because usually I just came in here, took my loss, and got back on the bus. But this is amazing.
Yeah. I know it's San Juan. I know where he's coming from. Yeah, they know what they're doing. Yeah, it's a wonderful psychological advantage. You might as well take advantage of it. If you got all those blue trophies to put on display, yeah. Make the visiting team have to walk and see it and just pause just for 5 seconds. Like, man, what have we gotten ourselves into? So it's such a, and one of the great traditions at Artesia is actually if you cover a championship game, and I was there 2 years ago when Artesia beat Roswell in the final, and I'm not able to experience it as much as I would like because I'm writing my story on deadline. But when Artesia wins a state championship game inside the Bulldog Bowl, there's a whole sequence of things they do to celebrate and mark the occasion, including, marking it up on the press box to mark their latest championship. It's a real thing. It's a tradition. And honestly, I don't know if they do it after road games. They probably don't do it after road games, but I know they do it after home games. And it's really a sight to behold, and the fans love it. The whole town just eats it up. And I was saying to somebody, somebody came on me at social media and said, we were talking about centralization, and somebody said to me, James, there are a lot of people that would like to watch Artesia and Roswell play in the state final. And my response was immediate. Then get in your damn car and go watch them. What is stopping you from doing that? And I would further say, the same start time. That's what's stopping them. Maybe, but they'll have, I mean, if you went to Bulldog Bowl, you know this to be true, and I know this to be true, and people who have been there know this to be true. If you go watch a state championship game in Artesia, you will have 10 times more fun, and you will have a far more memorable and exciting experience watching a championship game between Roswell and Artesia, either at Wool Bowl or especially Bulldog Bowl, than you would watching these two teams play up here. So, if you really want to go watch them play, get in your car. It'll be so worth it. You'll make a great memory for yourself, and you'll get to experience Bulldog Bowl on a championship Saturday, which is the rarest environment in high school football in New Mexico, no question. So that's what I said. I'm like, then get in your car and go watch. Nobody's stopping you. Go watch. You'll have a great time. And in fact, you'll probably end up thanking me for suggesting it, and you'll go down and you'll have a great memory of experiencing the Bulldog Bowl on the last day of the season. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. Yeah, agreed. Yeah. So anyway, now we move over to 4A, our nemesis game this weekend, because neither of one of us is going to be able to watch this game, a game that we both desperately want to see, between number 1 Bloomfield and number 2 St. Pius. These two have been circling each other all year. They played in the final last year. They were tied at halftime last year, and then Bloomfield outscored them by like 35 in the second half. That game was in Bloomfield. This game, even with Bloomfield as a 1 seed, is being played here in Albuquerque at Community Stadium at 1 o'clock Saturday. You and I both love this matchup. I've only seen St. Pius twice. Once against Academy, the game they blew the big lead and lost, and then last week against Chaparral. Look, St. Pius looks as locked in as you can get. And what a game this is going to be. This might end up being the best of the 5 games on Saturday. Yeah, it certainly could be. I think, Bloomfield's got the experience. I mean, even though they did lose a lot on that team, but I mean, Chavaria's a very good quarterback, obviously. I mean, I think he's thrown for half 100 touchdowns, right? He's getting close to that 50 mark. Yeah, and he's only thrown, you can count the number of interceptions on one hand. As a matter of fact, his numbers are very similar to that of Jordan Hatch at Cleveland. If you're comparing, the two's numbers, huge touchdown margin, very minimal interception total. Yeah, 48-9. So I just looked it up. 48 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. I mean, those are staggering numbers, right? 64% passer. Coach Kovacs, obviously, he's going to want to establish some of the running game as well, because I think this will be a similar strategy. You got to keep that Pius offense off the field. And, I mean, they do a good enough job of that on their own when they just score on 1 or 2 plays, as you witnessed often against Chaparral, right? But the least time they spend on the field, the better for Bloomfield. Yeah, see, and I think I would argue the same thing applies to Pius. They got to try and keep Bloomfield's offense off the field. Bloomfield's been scoring just left and right. Nobody's been able to slow them down. Nobody. I think their one loss was to Piedra Vista, who's a 6A team, and that was like the second week of the year, I think. I think both these teams look at these offenses and think, if we could limit them, that would be great. But, man, I don't know how. St. Pius, between quarterback Isaiah Carpenter, who I do not think threw the ball all that well last week against Chaparral. As a matter of fact, I know he didn't. But he did make one fantastic throw that led to a score, a 54-yard throw that only he could probably make, on a line. 60 yards in the air, maybe even 65 yards in the air on a line to his receiver, who catches it inside the 5. There's not a single quarterback, I would argue, that could have made that throw. He missed some other throws, and I think that's the one fair criticism with Isaiah. He's not entirely the most accurate quarterback, but because of his size, he can make so many plays, he can extend plays, and he can get his skill kids involved. Herschel Holloway, the junior tailback, Cale Cox-Liggins, Curtis Flakes, Ezra Ocampo. And matter of fact, Cale Cox-Liggins had 3 touchdowns against Chaparral the other day, and Curtis Flakes, the St. Pius coach, told me he is a next-generational type talent, which I was actually surprised to hear him say. Cox-Liggins had a jet sweep for a score, caught a touchdown pass, had a pick 6, and we were talking about him after the game, and I was actually surprised to hear Curtis speak about him that way. And he's just that much of a next-level athlete from what Curtis was saying. I hadn't really seen it so much the whole year because you've seen them more than I have this year. But, yeah, you're talking about 2 offenses. I mean, it's not unfair to say maybe the first one to get to 40 wins this game.
And, just real quick on Cale, I've thought that since last year. He just jumped out of the page at me. I had him in my studio. I remember talking to him a little bit during the commercial breaks and after. Because he's such a quiet kid, right? I'm like, dude, I tried to tell him, like, man, you're special. Just keep putting in the work. You are special. And, I think hopefully he sees the fruits of his labor. I mean, he's still a young guy. He still needs to put on some muscle. He's pretty small guy. You said that first to 40 wins, and then you talked about the quarterbacks. I think, hate to put this kind of pressure on those 2 quarterbacks, but if I had a crystal ball, which I don't, I'm just some doof, but I think the quarterback that throws the bad interception is going to lose this game.
Yeah, maybe. I think both of us could see the last team having possession, having a chance to win here. But you're right. I think both these quarterbacks had better play clean games. Chavarria throws it a lot, and he stepped in for Blake Spencer, who was fantastic. Bloomfield had a great running back coming back in Peyton Duncan, who frankly has been playing just as much receiver as he is in the backfield for Bloomfield. So they are finding different ways to get their skill kids involved. They got a bunch of kids that can run it, including Duncan. And so I think partially to help Chavarria and his transition, they've been deploying Peyton Duncan, who had a massive year as a running back last year, deploying him more as a receiving target, and it's been working in spades for Bloomfield. Nobody has found a way to get really close to this team, and the same is true for Pius since the loss to Academy. They've been over 40 every game, frequently winning by 5-6 touchdowns. Nobody has been able to crack them at all. Look at Herschel Holloway. He rushed for 80 yards last week, all in the first half. He didn't even touch the ball in the second half, and they still won 41-0. So, Pius has got extreme depth at the skill positions, just as Bloomfield does. To me, it's whose defense gets a stop in the fourth quarter in a game that I expect to go back and forth. Whose defense steps up and makes a key stop when you need it. It could be that it might be the quarterback that throws a pick, but to me, I think I'm looking for the defense to come when the other one is driving and they're getting near the red zone. Who comes up with a big stop? Can they get a big stop? Otherwise, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if both teams actually over 40 in this game. But what we can both agree on is that we're both miserably unhappy that we cannot watch this game in person.
Yeah, for sure.
So we envy anybody that gets a chance to go. So let's move into 3A and 2A real quick. The 3A game is in Dexter, 1 o'clock Saturday. Number 1, St. Mike's. Number 2, Dexter. These two played last year in the final in Santa Fe. Santa Fe beat St. Mike's beat them 28-26. I would argue that the St. Michael's defense has been the single most dominant unit in any class this year. They've only given up, I think, over 10 points to one team on their whole schedule. That was Academy, Albuquerque Academy. They frequently, teams will, maybe scratch out a touchdown, sometimes against the second teamers for St. Mike's after a game is well in hand. The St. Michael's defense has been smothering, stifling, dominant. And that's really, you've got Dexter, a really good running team. They're going to have to be physical against a team that lives off being physical. So this is kind of a fun matchup on paper, but the truth is nobody has been able to even come close to St. Mike's. I think 21 points Robertson at the end of the regular season, or that might have even been the playoff game, actually, I think, the quarterfinal game. Nobody's played St. Mike's closer than 21 points all year.
Yeah, and I think they're better this year than they were last year, in my opinion, from what I've seen. I mean, granted, I've only seen a few of their games, and I haven't seen them live. They've been on broadcast, on streams. But, yeah, that defense is just stifling. I just think Dexter would have to not only play a perfect game, but I think they'd have to get a real timely turnover in the wrong side of the field. They need a little help from St. Mike's in that one, I think.
Yeah, look, I mean, like I said, I think Academy scored 20 points, I think, on St. Mike's during the regular season, a game that that was way out of hand most of the way. Most of these teams that are playing St. Mike's, they're only managing one touchdown, if that. So Dexter is going to have to find a way with that offensive line. They've got a really good running back in Garrett Gonzalez, whose numbers are fantastic, and another kid, CJ Granados, who's been equally good on the ground. But it's their offensive line. They're going to have to just decide to man up and go after St. Mike's, a team that does not let you do that. So it makes it tough sledding. St. Mike's, to me, is the one team on Saturday that probably has the clearest advantage of all the teams in the finals. It's going to take a big effort from Dexter, I think, to make this close. In championship games, you never know. But I think of all the games on Saturday, St. Mike's has the clearest advantage.
I think I would agree with you on that.
Yeah,
I know it's not for a good podcast when we agree this much, but
no, it's no. I know. If you and I argued about centralization the way I have been on social media, we literally could go on for like 3 hours on this thing. So the last of the championship games is the 2A final, which is in Texico, 1:00 on Saturday. You've got number 1 Texico and number 3 Eunice. Eunice is the only team seeded outside the top 2 in any 11-man class that even made it to the finals. Matter of fact, I think they're the only seed. Yeah, actually, I think the 6-man and 8-man games were also 1 versus 2. Eunice is the lowest seed left as a 3 seed. So this is going to be a tough test. Texico beat them 42-34 during the regular season with a different quarterback than they're going to have Saturday. Their starter, Wallen, who got hurt early in the Santa Rosa game, the season opener, he missed with a separated shoulder. He missed pretty much the whole season. He came back for the Tularosa game, the season finale, and then he has played in the playoffs. So I was talking to Coach Galbraith from Texico about this, and boy, this opens up the number of options that Texico has in terms of how they deploy both Cross Fig, which I just love that name, man. Cross Fig, that's his name, Cross Fig.
That's a pretty famous name, by the way, in Texico. The Fig.
You bet.
Fig
Yeah,
boys.
his older brother was a sensational player at Texico. So Cross, who's a sophomore who didn't play much last year, he had been quarterbacking the team most of the season and putting up big numbers. So now Texico has the option of mixing up and doing whatever they want. They can move these kids around in the offense with different sets, with special formations, different looks, wildcat looks, whatever you want. So now they have an extra element that Eunice did not see the first time they played. So I think we're going to have to put it on the Eunice defense to kind of figure this out, because I think Texico is going to throw some new things at them that they did not see in the first game, aside from the fact that they're going to have a different quarterback, the starting quarterback, who's a senior and a veteran kid who played last year. So now Eunice has to deal with perhaps facing multiple quarterbacks, and man, no defensive coordinator wants to deal with that. That's just extra time, especially on a Thanksgiving week. Nobody wants to spend extra time trying to game plan for the possibility that 2 different guys are going to be in the backfield carrying the ball or throwing the ball. That complicates things for Eunice quite a bit. Having said that, this is the best 2-way rivalry game we have going right now, no question. And that too, I think, is a coin flip game.
You were talking about Eunice's defense. I wasn't aware they had one. I'm kidding. Cardinals fans, I'm kidding. Right? Like, this is a classic offense wins championships versus defense wins championships matchup. I think you'd agree that Texico's defense is a little better.
Yes, much better
than Eunice's. Now, I mean, yeah, this is another one of those games where definitely I'm going to be checking out the replay that night or the next day. I've had the privilege of doing a championship at Eunice. I think the Cardinals play really well at home, so this is not a home game for them. I think that'll factor into that, but that's definitely on my viewing list for Black Friday.
Yeah, I've done a championship game in Eunice, but that was so long ago. I was like late 80s, early 90s when Manal played down there one year. I have not been back since then. I've always wanted to. It's in my job, it's almost impossible to make a trip like that work. But I've never actually been to a game in Texico. And now Coach Galbraith, who was, as he told me when I interviewed him today, he's like, 2 years ago I was just a football coach. Now I'm the athletic director too. And he was stressing like crazy trying to get things organized logistically, finding workers that can do the game on Saturday, ticket takers and security and all the personnel that a school requires to operate a home playoff game. So he was kind of laughing. He's like, I've been so stressed this week, as opposed to normal years. He's
Eunice, a Clovis boy. He's under Rowan House. I'm sure he should multitask. He'll figure it out.
I actually told him, I'm like, couldn't you just reach out to Clovis and maybe see if you could borrow some of their stadium workers at Leon Williams, and they could maybe pitch in, and you could, give them some extra money as an incentive. And I don't think that had occurred to him. I don't think he wants to go that way necessarily. But I mean, Clovis is 10 miles down the road. So
Total side note. I was in Clovis for work last week. I think they might be replacing the turf at Leon Williams Stadium. I saw a lot of
really
bulldozers and stuff dug up, and so I think they might be getting new turf at Leon Williams Stadium.
I wonder if they would go to a purple turf.
Oh, there you go, and you get some reporting to do, James.
I mean, Alamo's got this gray field now. Alamogordo's got this gray field. Eunice, I think, has a red field. I might be wrong about that. They don't. Okay, no, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of Escalante.
Right.
That has a red field. Right. Lovington has the blue turf. So let's get some blue turf. Let's get some purple turf in there. I haven't been to Leon Williams in a while. I kind of miss going down there. Whenever I tell, that's always one of the stories I tell people when I say, you want to know one of the reasons I'm against centralization? I think of all the days I spent at Leon Williams for championship games, and I've probably been there for like half a dozen championship games at least, and all unique, but all really special. And Clovis is a special place on championship weekend, whether it was a Friday or Saturday. That town is one of the big reasons I would miss that. To move it all here, that means we'd never have a championship game in Clovis or Artesia or Roswell or Cruces or Eunice or Texico or Roswell, right down the line. And I would miss that. And I think you would too.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
Those Eunice, I mean, you haven't been down there in a while. They renovated the football stadium's brand new. Baseball, I call it the little mini Artesia because their facilities are amazing. Now the basketball gym just got renovated. I mean, the oil money in Eunice is disgustingly well. I mean, it's flowing over into athletic.
And I think that's where I got confused about the red turf. I remember they renovated the stadium, but I got them confused with Escalante, who does have a red turf. Yeah, and good for them. All these schools, Hobbs has an indoor football facility now. I don't know if all schools down there have that, or other schools might have it, but Hobbs has their own little indoor facility when the weather comes. I mean, I don't know how many times you've been to Watson Memorial Stadium, but it's big, it's huge. It's like an 11,000 seat stadium, which is hard.
Carlsbad this year put in like an $18 million facility on campus there. They got the lights going at both the football and baseball stadium. You hit a home run, the lights go with the music and everything. It's pretty cool.
I like it. Alrighty, so I'm going to cut Sebastian loose. He's got to get ready to go broadcast a doubleheader at Albuquerque High tonight. Matter of fact, I'm going to close it up here in a second because I need to be down there as well. So I will see you at Albuquerque High later. Thanks for joining me for the podcast as usual. I've enjoyed our chats all season, and I will have you back on during basketball at some point, and we'll just talk some hoops.
Sounds great. I'll see you soon.
All right, buddy. Bye. That is Sebastian Noel, the lead voice for ProView Networks based here in Albuquerque. And they, of course, will be doing games. They'll be doing all 5 championship games. They'll have crews, as Sebastian said, at all 5 places on Saturday, part of the NFHS network, where you can watch them. And maybe for some people, that's the better way to do it, and just have 5 different screens and watch all the games. That way you could watch all the games at once, I suppose. Okay, I thank Sebastian for joining us on the podcast. He and I like to talk high school sports, so I thank him for his time today. And that's going to kind of close things out for me today. I hope you get a chance to get out and watch some football this weekend. We've got games in Albuquerque, Rio Rancho, Dexter, Artesia, and Texico. So I hope you'll take some time and go out and watch one of the games. No Lobos on Saturday, no Lobo football on Saturday. So I hope you'll take some time to get out and enjoy one of these championship games. So that'll close things up for me. Have a great Thanksgiving, everybody. Not sure when you'll see this podcast. Might even be after the Thanksgiving holiday. If it's after, I hope you had a great holiday. If it's before, I hope you do have a great holiday. And I will see you soon. Take care.